I always dreamed of owning a little bistro tucked into a historic brick corner of downtown. Nothing fancy, just warm, light, good food, and people who came not just to eat, but to feel seen. That dream started when I was 12. My dad used to take me to this tiny family-run cafe on the weekends. It smelled like rosemary and toasted bread, and the owner always remembered your name. I swore one day I'd create a place like that myself. When I met Brandon, I was 25, working 2 jobs and going to culinary school at night. He was older, confident, with that kind of smooth charm that made people lean in closer. He said he believed in me, said he'd never met a woman so driven and real. He'd take care of the business side, he promised. All I had to do was focus on the food. Back then, that sounded like heaven. I married him 2 years later. By that time, I had burned through my savings and maxed out 2 credit cards, drafting menus and taste-testing recipes. Brandon handled the investors, the permits, the LLC formation. He was my husband. Why would I question anything? The place opened a month after our 3rd anniversary. Leora named after my grandmother. Brandon stood next to me at the ribbon cutting, beaming for photos, saying all the right things. And for a while, it was magic. We were booked solid for months. Critics raved, and I was exhausted but happy. I poured myself into every plate that left the kitchen, but I started noticing things, little things. Brandon would disappear for hours in the middle of service, claiming he had supplier meetings. He got overly defensive when I asked about the books, saying I was micromanaging and that I should just trust him like always. Then he hired her. Her name was Camilla. She was young, gorgeous, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Brandon said she had experience in hospitality marketing and would be a huge asset to the brand. I didn't like the way she looked at him, or at me for that matter, but I let it go. I didn't want to be that wife. I focused on the food, the staff, the guests. Then came the night I stayed late to prep for a wedding tasting the next morning. I ran out of truffle oil and decided to check Brandon's office. He always kept some extra stock for emergencies. That's when I saw it. A 2nd lease agreement, new restaurant name, new location. Brandon's name was on every line, and so was hers. Not mine, hers. At first, I thought it was a consulting gig, some side project. But when I opened the folder marked Interior Concepts, I nearly threw up. The color scheme, mine. The open kitchen idea, mine. Even the damn menu, he'd stolen entire sections of dishes I'd spent years perfecting. The kicker, there was a handwritten note at the bottom. For Camilla's birthday, your dream, our future. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked out, got into my car, and drove aimlessly through the city for 2 hours. My fingers shook on the wheel. I felt like someone had scooped out my chest and left me hollow. He had taken everything I ever wanted and gifted it to someone else. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I called my attorney. That was the day I stopped being the nice wife who cooked and smiled and believed in partnership. That was the day I started becoming something else entirely. People always assume women like me fall apart after betrayal. That we either sob into wine bottles or go on dramatic screaming fits in the middle of a sidewalk. I did neither. I showed up at Leora the next day as if nothing had happened. I plated dishes. I smiled at customers. I thanked the staff. But behind my smile, something had cracked, and it wasn't going to heal. I didn't confront Brandon. Not yet. He was too good at lying when cornered, too slick, too charming. And I wanted more than just the truth. I wanted leverage. So I started watching. Every receipt that came through the kitchen, I copied it. Every delivery invoice, I double-checked it. I began tracking where the inventory went, how much we ordered, versus how much actually showed up. The numbers didn't lie. Hundreds of dollars worth of premium ingredients were missing every week. And guess what? A supplier mentioned casually that Brandon had started ordering double. Said it was for the new place, wink wink. They were using my suppliers, my vendor relationships, my name, Camilla. She strutted through Leora like she owned the place, whispering in corners with Brandon, touching his arm a little too often. offering branding suggestions that made my blood boil. One time, she handed me a list of menu updates and had the audacity to say, "Just trying to keep things modern, you know." I stared at her for a full 10 seconds before calmly replying, "Camilla, dear, you wouldn't know modern if it slapped you with a microgreen." She blinked. Brandon laughed nervously. I think that's when she started to realize I wasn't the soft, naive little chef they thought I was. Over the next few weeks, I built a paper trail, bank statements, transfer records, a silent trail of money flowing out of our joint account to fund their secret little paradise. He'd been siphoning money from our restaurant, my restaurant, to finance hers. Legally, the LLC papers listed Brandon as the sole managing partner. That was intentional. I hadn't wanted to deal with the paperwork back then. I just wanted to cook. And that was my mistake. But I wasn't stupid anymore. I hired a forensic accountant, quietly. A friend from culinary school had married one, and when she heard what was happening, she offered to connect us for free. He didn't even blink when I showed him the files. "I see this all the time," he said. "Guys like him, they think their wives won't fight back. But this is clear embezzlement, and if you're ready, we can hit hard." I was ready. I opened a new account under my name, pulled out half of what remained in our shared savings. I contacted a small law firm that specialized in partnership disputes. Then I began scouting real estate. Not just any building. I was looking for something symbolic. 2 weeks later, I found it. A commercial property 1 block from where Brandon and Camilla's new place was opening. Still under renovation, still unbranded. The owner, an elderly couple moving to Florida. The timing perfect. I signed the papers under an LLC I created myself. They didn't know it, of course. To Brandon, I was still busy at Leora, exhausted from prep, too distracted to ask questions. And he was happy to let me believe everything was fine because he was planning to blindside me. Again, they had an opening date scheduled. I saw the event posted on Camilla's Instagram, "Coming soon, the freshest dining experience in the city." A labor of love. Labor of love. She had the audacity to use my phrase. It's what I used to say about Leora in every interview, every article. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I went to my newly bought space. I stood in the middle of the empty room, sunlight pouring through the windows, dust still settling on the floor, and I smiled. Because now I wasn't just building a restaurant. I was building revenge. I didn't rush. Revenge, if you do it right, takes time. Like braising short ribs, low heat, long hours. Let the pressure build until it falls apart on its own. Brandon and Camilla were too busy celebrating themselves to notice I was pulling away. I stopped attending meetings. I let them take over more decision-making at Leora. Brandon thought I was finally trusting him again. Camilla strutted around like she owned the place, barking orders she had no authority to give, and I let her. I needed them to feel safe, in control, comfortable, because when people get comfortable, they get sloppy. One night, Brandon stumbled in, reeking of whiskey and cheap cologne. He passed out on the couch phone still in his hand. I waited until he started snoring, then quietly picked up the phone and opened his messages. There they were, dozens of chats with Camilla, some nauseatingly romantic, others all business. They were planning to push me out legally. Brandon had even drafted a contract to buy out my future interest in Leora for a pathetic $15,000. $15,000 for a business I had poured my heart, my savings, and my soul into. And then I saw the message that broke the last thread. Just give her some sob story. She'll sign. She's too soft. Too soft. I took a screenshot. That was the moment I stopped acting like a wife and started thinking like a wolf. The next week, I started making calls. Quiet, strategic calls. I reached out to the original investors, some still on paper, some long gone. I invited them to lunch one by one. No pressure. Just a casual catch-up meal at a quiet little bistro near the courthouse. Over coffee, I showed them everything, the paper trail, the texts, the financials. They were horrified. Most of them had invested because of me, because of the vision I'd sold them, the food they'd fallen in love with. None of them knew Brandon was funneling money to another restaurant. One of the biggest backers, a retired tech exec named James, actually slammed his glass down on the table. "You built that place," he said. "Not him, not her, you. I'm in, whatever you need." What I needed was control. I laid out a proposal. Back me. Let me build something new, something real, just one block away from the disaster Brandon and Camilla were cooking up. A restaurant with integrity. I didn't just want to win, I wanted to end them. I had enough cash and support now to move fast. The new space was perfect open floor plan, warm light, great foot traffic. I hired a top-tier designer, a woman, fierce, brilliant. I told her I wanted something elegant but personal, a place that felt like a return. She smiled and said, "Then we'll call it Reclaimed." Reclaimed. God, it felt good, just saying it out loud. While Camilla was posting mood boards and inspo pics on Instagram, I was signing contracts, hiring the best staff in town, and booking vendors quietly under the radar. No public announcement, no leaks, no social buzz. Let them open first. Let them think they'd won. Back at Leora, I stayed quiet, distant. One day, Camilla cornered me in the kitchen and asked sweetly if I was thinking about moving on. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "Actually, yes. Something new, something better." She blinked confused. She had no idea. That same week, a health inspector dropped by their new location. Apparently, some permits were incomplete. The grand opening got delayed. I didn't say a word, just stirred my sauce and kept cooking. Then came the real break. One of the sous chefs Brandon had poached from Leora without telling me called on a quiet Sunday night. I hadn't spoken to him in months. "Hey," he said nervously. "I don't know what's going on, but I thought you should know. They've been trash-talking you. Brandon says you gave up everything. Camilla's telling people you never really mattered." I thanked him, and then I asked one question. "Would you come work for me?" There was a pause, then, "Hell yes." One by one, I started pulling staff from under them. Quietly, privately, no drama. I wasn't going to scream in public. I was going to let them open their doors and realize there was no one left inside. They picked a Friday night for their grand opening. Bold choice. Downtown was buzzing, streets were packed. Camilla had turned every social feed into a stage elegant flat lays, dramatic lighting captions like "New beginnings taste better." Brandon gave an interview to some local foodie blog calling their place the future of conscious dining. I read it while sipping espresso at Reclaimed. Inside my restaurant, my staff moved like a symphony fluid, focused, fierce. Every inch of that space told the story of who I'd become. Dark wood, gold trim, custom ceramics, and a menu that finally spoke in my voice. Not his, not hers. These were dishes I'd dreamed of for years, dishes Brandon once dismissed as too bold or too niche. This time I didn't ask for approval. I didn't wait for permission. We never announced our launch. No press, no influencers, no fake hype. Just a soft open invitation only. 30 seats, every one of them filled. Among the guests, the original Leora investors, 2 of the city's top food critics, and James, the retired tech exec, who brought along a Michelin-starred friend from LA. We didn't need media coverage. We were the media. At 6:15 p.m., my phone buzzed. A message from one of my old servers now working Brandon's floor. "Camilla just realized half the RSVPs are no-shows. They're panicking." I smiled, gave a subtle nod to my sommelier, and walked into the kitchen. "First course," I said calmly. "Let's show them what betrayal tastes like." At 6:30 sharp, the appetizers left the kitchen. Roasted fig crostini with honeyed goat cheese. Scallop ceviche with burnt citrus. Chilled corn soup with toasted paprika oil. Every bite whispered a story, and everyone who tasted it, they understood. Meanwhile, across the street, the cracks began to show. When you steal someone's concept, you don't inherit the execution. Their kitchen was in shambles, orders lagged, service stumbled, and the reviews they started rolling in. Pretty place, confused menu. Staff looked stressed, food was lukewarm, overpriced and underwhelming. You can feel the tension in the air. But my favorite came later that night. We left and walked into this cozy spot next door. No sign, no fuss. Just incredible food and the most graceful chef I've seen in years. Didn't catch her name, but she cooked like someone reclaiming her life. They didn't know I saw it, but I did. At exactly 8:00 p.m., Brandon walked past Reclaimed. He didn't notice me right away. I was near the front window, pouring wine for a guest. But then he stopped. I watched him take it all in. The design, the glow, the full house, the polished service. And I saw the moment it hit him. This wasn't just any restaurant. This was everything he tried to steal, refined, elevated, and owned. By me. Our eyes met. He started walking toward the door, but my host, bless her, stepped up calm and confident. "Sorry, sir, private event." He opened his mouth. She didn't flinch, so he turned and walked away. Camilla tried texting me later. Something petty, something desperate. Cute little pop-up. Shame about the timing. I didn't respond. Because the next day, that's when the real game began. By Monday, the buzz was impossible to ignore. Food blogs started asking who is behind Reclaimed. Why did this unannounced spot crush the hottest opening in town? I stayed quiet. No interviews, no statements. Let them talk. Let the silence feed the mystery. But Brandon, he didn't take silence well. He started calling. At first polite, "Hey, can we talk?" Then a little sharper, "You blindsided me, Rachel. This is childish." And finally, "You're making a mistake you'll regret." I didn't answer a single call because I wasn't done. Remember that buyout contract he drafted, the one offering me $15,000 for Leora? My attorney filed an injunction. On Tuesday morning, Brandon was served with a legal freeze on all assets tied to our original LLC. The claim embezzlement, intellectual property theft, and breach of fiduciary duty. I had the receipts. He had Camilla and a half-empty dining room. The moment the court order landed, our joint bank account was locked. Vendors started pulling out. A wine distributor canceled their delivery. Their head chef quit mid-shift because, well, he now worked for me. That same evening, I posted a quiet but sharp message on Reclaimed's Instagram. Some dreams get stolen. Others get reclaimed. For those who know the difference, welcome home. No hashtags, no names. But it spread like wildfire. Every woman who'd ever been pushed aside, talked over, or exploited for her ideas shared it. Within hours, my inbox was flooded. Messages from strangers, old colleagues, women in the restaurant world, saying, "You're telling our story." Meanwhile, Camilla tried to spin the narrative. She posted a photo of herself, sipping wine in their struggling restaurant, with the caption, "Let them copy. We'll keep creating." But it was too late. The narrative had shifted. They weren't visionaries anymore. They were thieves. Then came the interview. One of the food writers who had dined at Reclaimed reached out again. This time she wrote, "I don't need a quote. I just want to write the truth." And she did. The article was titled, "The Woman Who Cooked Her Way Back." It never mentioned Brandon or Camilla by name. It didn't have to. It told the story of a woman whose dream was stolen. And instead of falling apart, she bought the building next door and built something better. One quote stood out, "Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's plated in silence and served hot." That line hit national syndication. 3 days later, a major food magazine reached out for an interview and offered to feature Reclaimed in their next issue. Brandon, meanwhile, was bleeding money. Investors were furious. Camilla had no answers. And then she made the mistake I'd been waiting for. She posted a photo of herself inside Leora's kitchen with the caption, "Built this from the ground up." I sent it to my lawyer, who smiled. Camilla wasn't an owner. She had no legal claim to Leora. That post, combined with our documented paper trail, proved her involvement in misappropriation. It opened the door for a second move personal liability. Brandon called again. This time he didn't yell, he didn't insult, he begged. "I'll sell you Leora," he said. "Name your price." I leaned back in my chair, looked around Reclaimed, and finally said, the 4 words I'd been saving, "I already bought it." Brandon thought I bought the name. He didn't realize I bought the building. A month before their grand opening, I'd been working with a silent partner, a commercial real estate investor who loved Reclaimed so much. He asked if I wanted to make a move. Turned out the property Brandon leased for Leora was quietly up for sale. The original owner was having legal trouble and wanted out fast and clean. So we made an offer, and deep in the paperwork we tucked in a little clause, the kind that gives new ownership the right to terminate tenant leases with 30 days' notice. At first, I had no intention of using it, but then Camilla kept smirking online, and Brandon had the nerve to offer me back what was already mine. That's when I decided they needed a final course, and this one needed to be served in person. That Friday, I walked into Leora for the first time in weeks. No chef's coat, no heels, just clean-cut, calm, and confident. The dining room was nearly empty, just a few scattered guests. Camilla stood behind the host stand, tapping her nails like she owned the place. She looked up and froze. "Rachel," she blinked. "Can I help you?" I gave her the smallest smile. "Actually, yes. Is Brandon in?" She hesitated, then called out way too loudly, "Babe." God, it sounded fake coming from her. Brandon emerged from the back sleeves rolled up, pretending to look busy. But the second he saw me, his entire face dropped. "Rachel, I raised a hand. Don't. Just don't." I reached into my bag, pulled out an envelope, and placed it on the host stand. "This is your official lease termination notice. You have 15 days to vacate." Camilla blinked like I was speaking another language. "You're kidding." I shook my head. "I own this building now. I could have given you 30 days, but considering the number of violations I found during inspection, we're shortening that window." "Don't worry, it's all legal. My attorney's contact is on the second page." Brandon looked like the blood had drained from his face. "You can't just—" I said, and I did. The restaurant went dead silent. A couple in the corner paused mid-bite watching. One of the servers, someone who used to work for me, gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod from behind the counter. Then I turned to Camilla. "I believe you once said I didn't matter, that I was too soft to fight, that I'd just disappear." I leaned in slightly, letting it sink in. "You were right about one thing. I did disappear long enough to take everything back." Brandon stammered, "Rachel, come on. We built this together. This is overkill." I raised an eyebrow. "No, I built this. You sold it for flattery. You gave away my dream like it was a birthday gift. Now it's mine again, and you're the guest." Camilla tried to keep her cool. "You're ruining your own reputation. No one likes a bitter woman." I met her gaze without flinching. "No one likes a fraud who can't cook." That one hit. I turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing." I pulled out a second envelope, a manila folder this time, and placed it next to the termination notice. "Those are the financials, the ones I'll be handing to the tax board. You might want to get your books in order." Camilla's jaw dropped. Brandon didn't speak. I walked out without another word, and just as I stepped into the cool night air, I heard a quiet voice from inside the restaurant. One of the diners, barely above a whisper. "She's the real owner. Damn right." They vacated the building 12 days later. Camilla tried to hold out until the last possible second, but Brandon couldn't afford another lawsuit. Word had already spread, suppliers cut ties. Staff walked out, even their Instagram followers dropped by the thousands. The night they left, I drove by the place. Lights off, chairs stacked, windows bare. It looked exactly like what it had become, an empty shell, a monument to ego and betrayal. Brandon reached out again after that. No threats this time, just apologies. He sent a long email filled with excuses and old lines. I was under a lot of pressure. Camilla manipulated me. We were in a rough place, and of course, can we at least talk? I miss who we used to be. I didn't reply. Because there was no we. There was me, and there was the version of him I used to believe in. Camilla, on the other hand, vanished. Deleted her socials. Word was she tried to pitch a rebrand to some downtown investors. But no one bit. Apparently, being known as the woman who slept her way into someone else's restaurant wasn't the kind of branding they were looking for. I didn't gloat. I didn't have to. The world handled that for me. Meanwhile, Reclaimed exploded. What started as a soft open became a full launch. Reservations were booked out 6 weeks in advance. A major food publication called it the Quiet Revolution of the Year. I was nominated for a Rising Star Chef Award. But that wasn't the real win. The real win was the people. Every night, I watched guests walk, in strangers' couples, women in blazers, with tired eyes sit down, take that first bite and exhale, like they'd found something they didn't even know they were missing. And in the quiet moments when the last table cleared and the kitchen wound down, I'd sit at the bar with a glass of wine and just breathe. Not because I had destroyed them, but because I had rebuilt me. I wasn't just the chef. I wasn't just the ex-wife. I wasn't just the woman who got stolen from. I was the woman who took it all back. On my terms, in my name. No screaming, no public meltdown, just strategy, silence, and strength. Some nights the staff would bring up Brandon or Camilla, a joke, a rumor, a headline. I'd smile, sip my wine, and say, let them chase what I've already outgrown. Because the truth was, I wasn't angry anymore. I was done serving revenge. Now I served joy. A few months ago, I found myself walking past the little cafe my father used to take me to as a kid. It had closed down years ago now, just an empty storefront windows, dusty sign faded. But as I stood there, I could almost smell the rosemary bread again. I remembered how safe it felt inside, how warm, how possible everything seemed even when I was just a little girl, with big dreams and flower on her sleeves. Back then, I thought the dream was to open a restaurant. Now I know that dream was bigger. It was to become a woman who wouldn't let anyone take it from her again. People still ask me if I ever confronted Brandon one last time, if I told him off, shamed him, demanded an apology. But I didn't, because here's the truth. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is silence. Let them wonder how I did it. Let them replay every moment they underestimated me. Let them live in the shadow of a woman who rose without needing to scream. I didn't burn bridges, I just walked past them. Now on most nights, I leave the restaurant a little after 10. I step outside into the cool air heels clicking against the pavement. Sometimes I glance across the street at the old Lyra building. It's still empty, still for lease. Funny, for a place they once said would redefine the city, it didn't even last a season, but reclaimed. We're just getting started, and me, I don't cook for approval anymore. I cook for the girl I used to be, for the woman I've become, and for every soul who's ever been told you're just a side note in someone else's story. No, you can be the whole damn book. And me, I'm already writing my next chapter.